Hello, welcome back to Aetheral Space 12.2, Rise of the Full Moon. We are back.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm so excited for Arc 12 of Aetheral Space.
Reboot.
I noticed, by the way, in the new logo, that the blue line, intersects with the other three lines. And I didn't know what the white line was. I assume Musashi or something. But does that imply that he is now in opposition to them? Is he an enemy? Don't
What's
say
your thoughts in the comments?
Yeah. Alright. As Ruth walked into the slipstream braid, she kept a hand to her mouth, face pale. Her other hand still held the script in front of her, even though the screen had long since turned off. Her grip made clumsy by shock, she stuffed the device back into her pocket. Her mind raced. There was no way. Dragon was trying to enter the Dawn contest? Why? He definitely had no interest in becoming supreme, and there was no way, anyway, if he did. He wouldn't betray Skipper like that. They'd all fought to take down the Supreme, not take his place. That hadn't been what it was about, never. Was this even real? Maybe someone else was using his face and name. But this meant that Dragon Hadrian was still alive. She'd started to doubt, but if it was fake, he could still be dead. But if it was real, it didn't make any sense. But Ruth planted a hand against the wall of the hallway to steady herself, her heavy and ragged breathing stabbing at her lungs. It had been a long time since she'd had an attack like this. Is she having a realistic panic attack?
Yeah, it's a realistic depiction.
No! For a good minute she remained there, hoping against hope that none of her crew would walk past and see this. This wasn't the kind of image she wanted to convey. She has a crew now?
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah. Bruno and Serena don't, right?
No.
Finally, the panic subsided.
We don't have enough
subsided. And Ruth could stand up straight. The issue wasn't what Dragon was or wasn't doing. Not yet. She had to keep that in mind. For now, the issue was just what she needed to do next. Bruno had wanted to meet up and pursue Dragon together, but that wasn't realistic. Even if it was really him, the Inter Melee location's participants weren't available to the public in advance, just to prevent this kind of pursuit. They couldn't very well check all of them either. There wasn't nearly enough time to zip all over the galaxy like that. Besides, even leaving concerns like that aside, she couldn't just run off like that. She had people to look after, a business to run. She wasn't as free as she'd been back then. Sleep on it, she told herself. You can make a decision once you've had time to make a decision. Steeling herself, she pushed herself off the wall and strode into the common area, hoping that her face wouldn't give away her distress. Does my throat sound like gravelly?
That sounds fine to me.
The Slipstream Brave was a fair bit larger than most of the ships Skipper had ever managed to get them. The common area had some couches, a videograph on the wall, a ping-pong table, along with a hologram projector built into the floor if they needed to run a briefing. Even with all that, there was room to spare. Room that was currently being taken up by storage boxes lining one wall. Ruth raised an eyebrow as she saw that their pilot, Ellis Maine, was not using those boxes for their intended purpose. The young man, a couple of years younger than Ruth, was sitting atop one of the higher piles, his legs swinging in the air as he occupied himself with some game on his script.
Kids these days always on the script.
For real. The young man had shaggy brown hair barely restrained by a hair clip, his baggy red sweater and black skirt looking like they'd never seen an iron in the entirety of their existence. Anything that wasn't the cockpit or a simulation of one had little interest for him. Maine, Ruth snapped as she walked past. Get down from there! What's Maine's voice?
Maybe so adjacent but less snide.
Okay. Without looking at her, he offered a lazy salute. You got it, Miss Rhodes, he mumbled, gaze still fixed on his script as he hopped down to the carpeted floor. As a cheery litany of victory music sounded out from the device, he finally looked up at her and immediately frowned. You okay? Damn it, Maine had seen through her. You'd think the kid was a cogitant if not for his brown eyes. What the fuck? Why is she Miss Rhodes? Her name is Rudy Restarosi.
You grab that.
Fine, Ruth lied. Just got back from negotiating with Allison. She'll be passing us some more work before long. Is this the future? They call Allison now?
It's a variation.
Allison variation. Maine's eyes looked back to his game. Cool, he mumbled, already lost in the screen. Cool? Ruth rolled her eyes as she continued her walk to her personal quarters. She guessed it was cool that they might actually make a profit this month, even if it wasn't as interesting to everyone else. Was she the only one around here who worried about these things? Alice Pirouette, one of their heavy hitters, was pacing across the center of the room as Ruth approached. The young skirt woman's pink hair and pink eyes might have been attention-grabbing if not for the curling horns, like those of a ram, that extended down from her temples. This is terrifying because you keep introducing things that we've put in the roleplay, and I can't tell if it's on purpose. I also have a goatman. Those were a little overshadowing. One hand plunged into the pocket of her leather jacket. She nodded to Ruth as she passed. She was on her script as well, although she was calling someone, not playing a game. Ruth caught a snippet of it as she walked past. It was a familiar conversation. What's her voice?
It's like a little bit rough. Maybe not as much as Ruth, maybe?
Okay, so not Valley Girl.
No.
Listen, Alice, or as she preferred to be called in the field, Alice, said sternly to whatever unfortunate was on the other end of the phone. That's bullshit! Sorry, no, I just don't think you understand the angle I'm going for with this. Haven't you heard of Tai Nagatsu? It's like what she does. How is it different? Aw, man! Aw, that's so cool. I'm jealous. You can just censor that stuff. She visibly gritted her teeth together as the other party spoke. Have you even watched the reel I sent you guys? I bet you haven't even watched it. Wow! That's very disappointing for a company with your reputation. Is there someone more senior I could speak to, or... Poor Alice had been trying to get some weird documentary series about mercenary life off the ground for a while now. Seems she wasn't having any more success with this production company either. Ruth had to admire her tenacity, if nothing else. Near the door, as if on guard, stood Roman Hitch. His arms were crossed and his gaze, beneath the military helmet he wore on his shaved head, was hard. Ruth hadn't seen this guy smile once since he joined their crew 3 months ago. She expected the day she did would be the same that hell froze over. Is this Ruth talking?
Yeah.
Mr. Hitch? She nodded professionally as she passed him. He just grunted in response. A hallway from the common area led to their individual crew quarters. Again, bigger than they'd been in most of the previous slipstreams. More room for absence. Ruth opened the door to her room and closed it behind her, letting out the shuddering breath she'd been keeping deep inside. Dear God. Alive. If it was him, it had to be him. It couldn't be. Could she really sleep on that? What if the chance was gone by the time she woke up? She'd have messed up. She'd have messed up again. She'd have gotten cocky again. It was like the last 2 years had been stripped away from her. It was like she was the same as she'd been back then, bleeding down on the ground, having given up on thinking for herself. Back on that UAP ship, wondering why her friend had left. Fearing the worst. She couldn't do this. She couldn't get lost in her own head. Bruno would be waiting for a response. She couldn't just sleep on it. Ruth threw herself down onto her bed, clutching her temples as she tried to navigate through that labyrinth of fear, when there was a gentle knock at the door. Ooh, what's the voice for this guy?
He's like a friendly guy. Obviously you can't muffle it, but imagine his voice is a little muffled.
A little more what?
He's like a friendly guy.
Like this?
No, maybe a bit deeper.
Like this?
Yeah, like that.
Yo, Ruth. Rex's voice was muffled by door and mask both. You good? Ellis said you seemed a little funky. The kid was a damn snitch. I'm fine, she called back, but from the hoarseness in her tone it was obvious that wasn't true. At least Rex pretended he believed her. Cool, he said without missing a beat. Mind if I come in? Got some stuff we gotta talk about. With a sigh, Ruth pulled herself up off the bed, running her hands through her hair in a vain attempt to quell the chaos that falling down had wrought. Sure, she replied after a moment, accepting the futility. Come on in, I guess. Yo! You reused it!
He's appeared before.
When?
He was in the final church arc. They met at a bar.
Wow. Who is this guy again?
He has like the mask on and he's like, oh, you guys don't have faces.
Oh, and this is fucking...
He gave her his business card.
Not only that, but you royal roaded it. Oh my goodness. The door slid open and Rex Restarosi, her business partner, co-founder of Restarosi and Road, poked his head inside. If the face behind that mask had changed any in the 2 years since they'd met at the final church true meet, Ruth wouldn't have been able to tell. She'd never seen him without it, after all. That's just like begging you to reveal it's a character we already know. I don't trust you, Tan. What do you mean the mask has never been removed? Tan, honey?
Well, it is. That's the way it is.
Tan, who is it under there?
It's Rex.
I'm sure it is. Coming from Abra Facade, Rex always wore a mask. He considered that his real face. Swapping those masks out was just like changing his expression. And so today he was wearing a new helmet, bright red with a circular visor like a porthole in the center. I do remember this. She met him in the bar. That's right. A digital exclamation mark blinked in the center of the circle, the closest thing to eyes Rex's current visage had. The door slid shut behind him. "I've been talking to some of the mechanics," Rex said casually, offering a hand up in a casual wave. "They're thinking that even if we end up having to settle for the XLD fuel, there's a converter they can rig up that'll..." "Bruno found Dragon," Ruth said quietly. Rex's hand paused awkwardly in midair, slowly lowering down until it rested by his side. "Your old friend, Bruno?" "It's the only Bruno I know," Ruth nodded. For a good while, Rex didn't say anything else. He just stood there, discomfort radiating from his posture, that red exclamation point blinking idly in the center of his face. It was obvious why. More than once, Rex had accompanied her on one of the wild goose chases Bruno had called her out for, and so he had a pretty good grasp of the situation when it came to Dragon Hadrian. So seeing her like this, so somber, and hearing that Dragon had been found, the conclusion he'd come to is obvious. No wonder this situation seemed so excruciating for him. Ruth decided to put him out of his misery. "He's not dead," she said, smirking ruefully despite everything.
Ruefully?
Oh! Ruthfully?
Yeah.
Rex's face was concealed as ever, but Ruth could hear the smile in his voice. "Well, that's great, right?" With a sigh, Ruth ran a hand over her face. "He is entering the Dawn contest." "Oh!" And just like that, the smile was gone. That's, I feel bad for Rex. What the fuck is he supposed to say? This is one of those conversations, you ever been in those where you're in a trap where, like, you respond to people and you listen and then they, like, keep dropping the other shit.
New information.
It's like, okay, come on. What do you want me to say? It's a mess. Ruth threw up her hand in some vague and indecipherable gesture before running the bridge of her nose. I have no idea what's going on. Whether it's even true or what... Ah! Rex silently stepped over to the chair in the corner of the room and sat down, leaning forward, his gloved hands clasped together. "Well, what does Bruno say?" No doubt he already had an idea, but Ruth told him anyway. "He wants to meet up," she said. "Go after him, that kind of thing. I don't even know how we do that, but..." "Do you want to do that?" Rex asked calmly. Ruth shook her head. "It's not even about that. We can't. There's stuff we need to do. We can't just go running around on an adventure or whatever." It was Rex's turn to sigh, but through the mask, the noise was distorted until it could barely be recognized. "If it's what you want," he said, "then I'll make it happen." "Do you want cheesecake, Tan?"
Oh, no, I don't want cheesecake.
I heard it in the background. "Don't say that," Ruth said, looking away. "Just getting to where Bruno is on such short notice and then doing whatever plan he's out together to find out Dragon's location. It'll cost us a fortune. We can't." "You keep saying we can't," Rex observed, "but you won't say whether or not you want to." The room grew quiet. For a long time, Ruth just sat there, the words she wanted to say hovering on the edges of her lips. Finally, though, she had no choice but to let them escape. I do want to find him. I want to know what's going on. She sniffed. "He's my friend." And again, when Rex spoke, she could hear that damned grin of his in his voice. "Then we'll figure it out. Hey, we make money so we can spend it, right?" "Right." Ruth rolled her eyes at the line she'd heard so many times already. "Besides," Rex tapped his finger against his helmet. His nose was obviously out of reach. "I'm a pretty savvy businessman, as you well know. I'm sure I can figure out a way to turn a profit from this." Ruth snorted, despite the tension still broiling in her stomach. "Oh, Rex is kind of that guy. I gotta be honest.
Rex is a real one.
Rex is a real one. Guys, let us know in the comments if Rex is a real one." There was something about Rex, the way he could put on the faux greed like that put people at ease. People expected a person in their line of work to be money-grubbing, she supposed, and Rex just gave them what they wanted. A businessman uninterested in business would be far more unsettling, even if that was closer to the real him. They didn't talk about the past, they didn't concern themselves with it. That was how they found something close to stability in this crazy world. And now, Ruth thought, they were just throwing all of that away. A shiver went down her spine. "You know," she muttered, leaning back on the bed as she ran a finger along her temple, "you know what worries me even more?" Rex cocked his head, and the exclamation point in his mask switched to a question mark. "What's that?" After everything that happened, I really did try to lay low for a while. Don't laugh, I did. Hiding out in Final Church territory, joining up with you. Hell, I even changed my last name just to be safe. Doesn't look like Dragon's done any of that. You get me? Ruth lay back fully, staring up at the familiar ceiling. If Bruno noticed him, she said. Who else did? Popcorn.
The world was on fire. The reason why it was on fire was simple enough. In the chaotic brawl that constituted an outer melee, a pyrokineticist had clashed with an oil manipulator. Things had escalated naturally from there, flames quickly consuming the wooden temple that had been the site of the battle.
Imagine fire, one of the most common attack and things that can be lit on fire, and your ability is oil manipulation in a world with plasma guns? What was he thinking? Angry video game nerd commentary.
Angry Aether nerd.
Angry Aether nerd? Please tell me that's a thing in setting. He's he tapes the fucking outer melees and does commentary on them like react videos.
Oh, they're definitely react videos, this shit.
Oh, that's so good.
This place, where 200 hopeful warriors had come together to discern who among them was strongest, was a recreation of a real temple that existed far beneath the depths of Azumha. The efforts taken by the organisational committee, a combination of respected military figures and body officials, to replicate the site had truly been exacting. It was as close to one-to-one as a counterfeit could get. But the reason it elected to make this the arena for an outer melee? There was no great purpose, no reason a specific environment would draw out more strength for the fighters. It simply decided this would be an interesting locale for people to kill each other in.
Great for TV.
Daisuke Ono supposed it did make for quite the spectacle.
Okay, that's a cool name.
Now it was like the temple itself was composed of flames. Great walls of fire surrounded him on all sides, and the grand statue of the secret chief that resided in the centre of the main hall was quickly melting. Daisuke paid no mind to any of that, though, even as the flames lit at his body and the molten metal scorched at his feet. From pain came power, after all. That was his devil's mantra.
What is this? Hold on. What is devil's mantra? Is this your new fucking power system? What?
Daisuke growled as he looked out into the haze of flames all around. His heavy armor...
I'm making a prediction. Devil's mantra, because Aether's based on consciousness, is an idea that when you are an Aether user and you have an idea so resolute in your mind, you kind of will it to reality. So, for example, he so firmly believes that from pain comes power that when he is, in pain, he gets stronger. That is my belief. That is what Devil's mantra is, calling it now, locking it in.
Daisuke growled as he looked out into the haze of flames all around, his heavy armor rattling as he adjusted his weight. He was a massive pugnant, nearly 8 feet tall, and almost all of his body was wrapped in thick metal armor. If not for his infusion, though, even that would have surely melted away by now. This had long since to be a temperature which normal human beings could survive. The only part of his body Daisuke's armor didn't cover was his face. That was concealed instead by a leering demon mask, his golden pupils glaring from beneath it, searching for his final enemy.
Is this one of those masks where it's the fanged in the horns? Or is this one of the ones with the long nose? Ah.
6 hours ago, there had been 200 fighters here. Now there were but 2. He's got to get that victory royale.
Hell yeah. Could you imagine if he, goes down, it says number 3rd place? He's on his knees. Revive me, Dragon!
Grunting with effort, Daisuke lifted his massive Nadachi and roared out into the flames. Show yourself! Show yourself, coward! For a moment there was no reply save for the growling of the inferno. There was a crash. Then there was a crash as the secret chief's head, finally losing integrity, collapsed down to the floor.
I would honestly remove the then, just keep it there was a crash.
Only then did Daisuke's adversary reply. I'd advise you to surrender now.
It's Musashi! I can tell.
The swordsman said calmly as he stepped out of the fire. He wore a flowing white war robe, somehow unmarred by the flames around him with the soot raining down. Beneath that, a red shirt and a black tie, utterly contrasting the traditional attire above. This was a man that defied chronology.
That's the hardest possible way to describe someone wearing 2 different kinds of fits.
He kept one arm tucked behind his back like a traditional fencer, while from his other hand, palm extended out to side, a burning blade of white light blazed.
He's truly Two-Faced now.
One half of the man's face glared at Daisuke, the expression calm, stern, rigid but still human. The other half of the man's face was taken up by a pure white mask, a jet-black artificial eye staring out from it. The face of a doll, lacking even colour, inhuman, eerie. Special Officer Toyomuzashi, the supreme commander of the 8 phases of the turning of the air, the one they called the full moon.
What? Why do they call him the full moon?
Because it slaps.
Yo.
Surrender, Daisuke hissed, pointing his sword at the incoming opponents.
Do you mean it's no Dachi?
After all this, is that a joke? And Nodachi is a sword, you fuck.
I know, but...
Crimson Aether crackled menacingly around the huge man, but if Toy Musashi was intimidated by the display, he did not show it. He simply nodded calmly as Daisuke addressed him. Indeed, he said seriously. You should have been provided with something called Caravan before the outer melee began. It's attached to your wrist like a watch. Tap at the face 3 times, it will accept your surrender immediately. Daisuke narrowed his eyes. And if I refuse, then you will die, Tomizazi said, his expression unchanging. Here and now.
This is how Musashi approaches every opponent.
Daisuke Ono chuckled. Daisuke Ono laughed. Daisuke Ono guffawed. Daisuke Ono ranged. Don't get cocky, you son of a bitch! He bellowed, crossing the distance between himself and Musashi in a second, his Nodachi crashing down like a meteor. But Toy Musashi was ready for him. The blades clashed in that instant, so many times that counting would have been impossible. A contest of strength that Daisuke narrowed. Excuse me.
That was so funny.
Daisuke narrowly won. Can I come back to you for this last little bit?
Yeah. He seized Musashi's sword arm by the wrist, the blade vanishing as he applied pressure to the limb, and brought the Nodachi down towards his head. Against an ordinary opponent, that would have been it. It goes without saying that Toy Musashi was not an ordinary opponent. Right before the blade would have struck Musashi, he pulled his hand out from behind his back, and 5 smaller blades of light burst out from his fingers like claws. He's... variation! He's learning. He's beginning to believe. Daisuke's sword was heavy, beloved by gravity as it was pulled down towards its target's skull. Wrong, it's no apostrophe. Targets does need an apostrophe. But Musashi's 5 swords held no weight at all. It was the simplest thing for him to thrust them forwards, pierce through Daisuke's armor, and skewer his body. Daisuke hesitated as that sharp pain stabbed into him. Musashi did not miss that opportunity. Aided by those thrusters of his, he slammed his foot into Daisuke's side, breaking the giant's grip and launching Musashi up into the burning rafters. There, on a foothold that was surely not long for this world, he perched and observed his opponent. His eyes, one gray, one black, were fixed on the 5 smoking holes he had left in Daisuke's armor. My aim was exact, he declared with all the confidence in the world. I know for a fact I pierced your lungs just now. It should be impossible for you to move, let alone fight. Surrender now and they may be able to save you. Daisuke Ono's hand shook as he pressed it against the burning marks. He chuckled again, a wet, bloody chuckle, but a genuine one all the same. That dull, golden gaze turned upwards to look at Musashi once more. Don't underestimate me, you piece of crap, he muttered, a joyless grin spreading out beneath his mask. You don't know what my power is, huh? I expect you'll tell me. You seem the type. Devil's Mantra! Daisuke Ono roared, throwing his arms wide as if asserting his existence to the very world. His aether exploded around him like a tempest, furiously cracking through the air. The more I get hurt, the more powerful I become! When I got here, I was at the peak of human potential. You just made me a damn titan! Now die, you little shit! Daisuke kicked off the ground, shattering the fragile wood beneath him as he leapt up towards Musashi. The full moon made no move to dodge or reflect. He just crouched there as Daisuke came, quietly considering the man's words. First a man, then a titan, you say? He said, rubbing his chin. I see. In that case, a Toy Musashi vanished. Daisuke had no time to see what had happened. He had no time to comprehend what had happened. There wasn't even time to feel pain. But that was perfectly natural. After all, he had been stabbed right through the back. Musashi would never! You may perish a god, Musashi said. Daisuke Ono collapsed dead to the floor without word or spectacle. Just another man, too easily slain, and just another corpse, too easily burnt. Rise of the full moon! Dragon and Atoy at the fucking, what's it called? The Dawn Contest, looking at each other like Sasuke and Naruto. Oh, man. We have Aether questions, I'm sure. Let me get them open. Wow. Good Day is gonna fucking lose it. That's crazy.
Which part?
When Ty got mentioned.
Yeah.
That's fucking awesome. Let me see. Where's the Aether thread? Aetheral questions. Okay. So Cheese has a question. I don't think you will answer because we've already been over this about spoiler territory. But his question was, why wasn't Aether discovered before the Gene Tyrants? Did it have something to do with apocalypses on home/Earth before their reign?
There was a specific thing they had to do to discover Aether that is a bit spoilery, but it was a very out there thing that wouldn't have been attempted previously.
So it wasn't possible to unlock Aether before that?
It was technically possible, but the chance was so small that they didn't prior to that.
Right. Cheese also asks, how advanced was neuroscience during the reign of the Gene Tyrants? What sort of crazy shit could you do if it was indeed advanced?
Well, it was pretty advanced. Like, the Umbrants have, like, conscious control of their own minds, and that was something put in them by the Gene Tyrants.
Mm-hmm. Well, also, we know in Aetheral Space it's happened enough times that it's, like, possible to record your consciousness. I assume even without Aether, with, like, technology back in the Gene Tyrant days, they had shit that could, like, record your mind, I assume. Lena style.
Not necessarily. Gene Tyrants couldn't really do that as well. They could...
So it's only an Aether thing that lets you do that?
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting, then, because in the roleplay, there's a Gene Tyrant character, and what they did was they made an automatic, and they, like, scanned their brain and put their consciousness kind of into the robot, so they survived as a robot even though they died in the 1,000 Revolutions.
Right.
That's interesting. Okay, and then... here's a fun one. Arthur asks, what are some delicacies throughout the galaxy? If you name two, I can name one, if you would give me that blessing.
Well, there's Center Stew.
Mm-hmm.
And that's in the Supremacy. It was from the 1,000 Revolutions, a recipe for soldiers, where they would just, like, take whatever they could find and put in a big stew that the camp would eat out of when they were behind enemy lines.
I like that because there's like 1,000 variations of that in the real world where it's just like use whatever you have.
Yeah. And then in the Final Church, Humilist specifically, they have many ways to use grass.
Ooh. Okay. I've got a fun one if you'll allow me permission to birth Lauren.
Absolutely, please.
So I like to think on a planet somewhere. Maybe it's a faraway backwater planet. Maybe it's like one of the like places owned by somewhere, but there's like a planet that's mostly water, and there are these massive crustaceans that are kind of like a mix between like a shark and a lobster, and they're like there are whole companies and operations based around like hunting these massive things and then selling them for major profit to like luxury places as like a delicacy type food. And it's like supposedly some of the most tender meat you can have from seafood.
Ooh, very nice.
But it's like a whole ordeal. They have to have like special equipment, and they usually have an Aether user on board because these guys are strong as shit.
Mm.
All right.
I like that.
Do you want any more, or are we good for?
I think we're good for questions.
All right. Well, actually, hold on. I do have one more for you.
Okay. Is
Do
this
they
from
still
you?
have No, this is from Good A. Do they still have personas still exist in the AS universe? And if so, tell us about them. So
no.
I think we talked about this kind of
want to.
sort of like Scurrant face, right?
Yeah, that'd be fun.
To do that nowadays with how many Scurrants are basically just furries.
Well,
it's
there's
a
not that many. But...
Right. Well, we're in a galaxy where there's trillions of people, so if even only 1% of the population is Scurrants, that's still like millions and millions.
Mm-mm-mm.
And you cannot tell me there wasn't a furry Gene Tyrant. I mean, we literally have already met a cat girl.
Granted,
an elder cat girl.
Cat girls, in my mind, are not fairies.
Well, it depends on how your cat... So your cat girls just have ears and a tail. They're not really, like, furry. They're basically human otherwise.
Yeah.
But there are variations of cat girls that are very furry.
But Cats, the movie.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, I think that about solves it then. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.